hit on tonight, we're going to hit on some calming things that can help you and your children. So, we're going to talk about calmness and how important calmness is and some benefits of calmness. We're also going to talk, and then we will send you resources for some of the things we talk about. Last week we talked about coaching children, and that was kind of right at the end. And we're going to jump back into that tonight. We're going to talk about when kids are escalated, how do we, the adults, manage it? And then we are, last but not least, going to talk about early intervention and some boundaries around behavior within your household. And so, what we'll do is I'll talk for a little bit. Linda Hossman, Linda, unmute and say hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome tonight.
Linda is my colleague, and I'm going to call her kind of our parent.
Oh, you went mute, Marty. There you go.
Sorry about that. Linda is our parent expert, is what I'm going to call her, because she has 92 children. Okay, 15, but several of them adopted through the foster care system. And so Linda has worked with families for a number of years. And so we're partnering on this together tonight. And so I want to start with just, are there any questions? Because Nikki, I put you on the spot last week, and then you said you had a follow-up question tonight. So do you want to start there, and then we'll give information, and then we'll also end the session if there's any questions?
Sure. For those of you that weren't here last week, we talked about the importance of coaching your child when outside of the situations that are hard. And my son really is struggling with the remote learning homework aspect. And so every night has been a battle. And of course, I'm tired at the end of the day, so I'm not in my best place. And so Marty gave great feedback on doing some coaching and talking about how to handle the situation way outside of the situation, which I would do right before, but instead we did it this weekend, which was great. My question is, as soon as I started talking about it, even though it was nowhere near homework time, it was in the weekend, he immediately got upset and started bawling and having negative self-talk. And so I didn't know if I should keep going, because I don't want him to realize, hey, if I react negatively emotional, then we stop having these difficult conversations and then we never actually coach, or if then suddenly it's not a calm, neutral time and I should pause and wait till he regroups himself. So that was just my question, is do you push through even though it's hard because he's upset, he doesn't like hearing because he knows that it's a struggle, or should I have paused and waited until he doesn't have the emotional reaction even talking about it?
That's a great question, Nikki. And I think there's probably not a right or a wrong, but what I will say, which will lead us right into our conversation, is when our human brain does not have the capacity to be emotional and logical. And so trying to continue a conversation with children or adults who are very emotional is going to be less than productive. But I do think, Nikki, that that it's okay to set a standard about, you're upset right now, and I know this is really hard for you. We are going to need to talk about it, but I'm going to wait until you're in a place where we can talk about it. The other thing that came to my mind, Nikki, it was sometimes it's easier to write questions down for kids, and you can read them and think about it. If you want to answer in writing, that's okay. We're still going to talk about it. Or I just want you to know what questions I'm going to ask you, because I'm always going to be on your side. And I know this is hard. And my sense is, Nikki, he wasn't crying because he was trying to avoid. He was crying because it's a really emotional subject for him. Is that accurate?
Probably, yeah.
And so I also think as a parent, we have to know the difference between I'm crying to avoid, or I'm angry to avoid, and I am crying because I'm emotional. This is hard for me. Now, we also want our children to have the grit or the resilience to be able to work through those hard things. But I think trying to push through in a conversation format at the time a child is emotional is probably going to be less than productive. And then because humans mirror emotions, I think what happens, and plus it's your own child, so it's emotional, right? So I think because humans mirror emotions, if we're trying to talk to a child when they're emotional, we run the risk of mirroring that emotion. And a lot of times what we know is that anger is never a primary emotion. It's a secondary emotion that is driven by fear, by frustration, by embarrassment, and by sadness sometimes. And so, what will happen oftentimes to us as the adults is if we try to talk to our children while they're frustrated and angry and emotional, we will begin to mirror that. And a lot of times, then our emotion will come out as anger. And we want to it's okay to get angry with your children. For God's sake, if you didn't, then we would all want the medication you're on. However, to try and problem solve needs to be where we're both in a place that we can talk through things without anger, without those overwhelming feelings. Okay, so Nikki, I didn't give you a cut and dry answer, maybe food for thought and some nuggets to hold on to, but I do like the concept of writing questions out for children and saying, these are the things I want to talk about. If you have questions you want to talk about, I want you to write those down too, or you can just say them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Nick, for being vulnerable to talk about that. I mean, but you and I go way back,
Yeah,
sister.
so far, and I still came back for more.
I love it. Love it. Hey, let's talk about calmness, the concept of emotional. If people aren't emotional right now, my goodness, I think just the anxiety and the stress with COVID and with our unknowns and our political state and our society, there's just a lot of emotion. And I think as parents, one of the goals that we strive for is calmness. Not only do we strive for calmness for ourselves, but also calmness for our children. And today, when I was doing some work around what's going to be our lead in tonight, I looked up some of the benefits of calmness. One of the benefits is a lower heart rate or a slower heart rate, which there are health benefits to calmness. We know that, right? Um, there's increased breathing capacity, which means your brain gets more air. There is, you're more in control of your own emotions, and therefore you're able to be a better communicator when you're calm. And I think when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about calmness for the adults and calmness for the children. I think when we're calm, we can more concisely communicate what we're trying to tell our children. And so being able to be calm to communicate with them is going to be beneficial. The other thing is it helps increase focus. Calmness helps increase focus. And so I think that I know I'm stealing a line from Linda that I love. There is no statute of limitations on what I'm going to call problem solving an event with your children. It doesn't, now, if it's a safety concern, things have to be done immediately, right? But if it is my child has made a mistake and I need to problem solve with them, that doesn't have to be done immediately. In fact, what I find is frequently, if we postpone that, it is easier to have those conversations. Although, when it's difficult, as Nikki, you found out with your son, when it's a difficult subject area or an emotional subject area, just trying to talk about it may recreate that emotion. Okay. But I think part of what we want to teach our children too is self regulation and how to take good care of themselves. So I'm going to start with a concept that some of your schools are utilizing. And I think when your children have heard something at school and then as parents you can mirror it at home, it can be very beneficial because kids can then make the connection between, oh, my teacher does that and now my mom's doing that. So there's a connection between the two, and it's harder when kids see those connections. It is harder to split parents from school, from teachers, or teachers from parents. Not every school in Springfield Public 186 is using this, but it is a strategy that a number of your schools are using. I'm going to call it TAPS, total and perfect silence. And so I want to talk in a little bit of depth about what that could look like. TAPS is about, oftentimes what happens is younger kids in particular, their bodies are up and moving, and then they're kind of in this upper place and not calm, and they don't always know how to bring their bodies down. And I don't know about you guys, I'm old and I was the youngest of 7 kids, so every afternoon we had quiet time. And by the time I came along, quiet time got quite extended because my mom was tired. But we had quiet time, and that was teaching us how to come down. So, one of the things we want our kids to be able to do is be excited, be motivated, be energetic, but then we also want them to be able to come back down, slow their minds down so that they can come back into that logical decision making space. Okay. So when I say TAPS, total and perfect silence, you can choose how that might look in your household. I'm going to tell you how it looks frequently in the classroom. Okay. Because we're making some connections here. In the classroom, what that would look like is we have gone to specials and we're coming back from specials. So as a class, when our pockets hit the seat, our heads also go down on the desk. We close our eyes. However, there are exceptions to closing eyes. Okay. And this is younger children, of course, going to specials. Okay. Thank you, Peggy, for the art, music, PE. Thank you. We pockets hit the seat. We close our eyes. We breathe deeply, slowly, and silently. And we're thinking about calming our bodies down so that we can move back into the next learning space. And oftentimes teachers are coaching what it might look like. I want you to think as you are taking deep, slow, quiet, silent breaths, what it might look like to be a good learner when we get our math books out. Okay. Now, learning how to hold your body still is important because what we want our children to have is the ability to be in charge of their own bodies. And here's what we know. You are in charge of your body. And so I don't know if any of you have really energetic, fast moving children in your household or not, but being able to slow your body down will help you be a better learner, will help you be a better thinker, will help you be a better decision maker, will help you be a better communicator. And so, what TAPS might look like in the household is just sitting down in an assigned location or a designated location, but also teaching kids while you're sitting, I want you to hold still so you can hold your hands like this. You can close your eyes. If you don't close your eyes, I want you to focus on a specific point, and we're going to just take deep breaths and calm our bodies down. Okay. What length of time? Anywhere from 6 to 7 hours. I'm teasing on that. Although if we can get them calm, we might take advantage of 6 to 7 hours, right? I think it depends on the age of your child. It depends on how hyped up their body is. But you can also watch as a parent, and when they're breathing slowly and silently and calming their bodies, you can see their bodies start to come down and relax. So you can decide how long. With younger kids, I frequently ask, do you want to do it 1 minute or 2 minutes? Do you want to do it 30 seconds or 1 minute? Okay. And so the reason I'm using the word TAPS again, and I'm just going to reinforce this, the only reason I'm using the word TAPS, you don't have to at home, but it does mirror what many children are hearing at school. Okay. Now I'm going to let Linda talk a little bit about some strategies that she has used with children, both in her home and in the classroom. And then we will send you the links to these strategies.
Thanks, Marty. I have to share the cutest story really fast about TAPS. And a teacher that I was working with yesterday, she said, oh my gosh, When you left, I forgot what that was called. And so I started calling it cars. And I know the teacher quite well. And I said, cars? What in the world does cars stand for? She said, complete and respectful silence. I said, well, that works out great for me. It doesn't matter what you call it. And but she demonstrated, she uses it preventively. And she teaches a very busy group of first and second grade combo classroom. So for those of you that are getting this from the parent view or the teacher view, a good rule of thumb is anytime I return from having been gone somewhere. Now, that might mean as a class we've been to recess. It might mean at home that we've all been playing outside and it's time to come in for dinner. And I just shared this because I thought it was a unique way for her to address her students. But she stopped them at the door and she said, when we enter the classroom, we will be getting into our cars, turning our engines off, and I will give you the signal when it's time for a restart. So I thought that was really creative on her part. She said it was truly out of desperation because she forgot what I'd said. And anyway, wanted to share that. But another thing about calmness has to do with anything that crosses the midline of our body. And so in the handout, you will see, you will get a link to a handout. I think we'll send the handout as well. Is that correct, Marty?
That is correct.
A little handout specifically about brain gym. And brain gym can help kids become awake without revving them up. It can help kids increase their longevity around concentration. There are exercises for specific mood enhancement. And each one of these exercises, you will read the directions and try it out, and then you will teach it to your child because it takes away the technology piece. And I think that that is actually very important sometimes to remove the technology piece from the interaction that we have with children. How many of you have tried things on technology and it revs your kids up? And then you have to rev them down before you can have them be ready to do the next thing. So you'll see that there are ones called cross crawls. That's simply, you can do it standing or you can do it sitting. And it's elbow to knee across the body. So opposite, your elbow to the opposite knee. And this helps calm the brain. Anytime we cross the midline, it helps increase circulation and it helps our hemispheres of our brain to connect and communicate more intensely, directly following that. There's another thing I want to mention that I learned from our therapist that I used with our children, with many of our children, and it is called strong sitting. It actually is taken from yoga, but it is crisscross, but no applesauce. You sit with your back, and sometimes it's comfortable to have kids put their back against the wall, and it's crisscross, and then they will do the hookup with their hands, or some people call that the pretzel. You sit tall and straight, you close your eyes, and you breathe. So it's kind of a crossing the midline form of taps. And I would start with 30 seconds. Yeah, I can't do it because I have an injured shoulder. I'm sorry. Thanks, Marty. Yeah, you do that and hook it up. Yeah, just like that. Perfect. Sit tall and straight. Your eyes are closed. You breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And the cool thing, some of our kids that are small, they have kind of short little arms, and that's hard for them to do. Some of them are adorable and they have chubby little arms. So they can do what I call the butterfly, which is simply to put your hand on each of your shoulders. It will have the same effect as the pretzel or the hookup. And so for kids who struggle and they get frustrated, that's not going to be therapeutic for them in that moment. So just have them do the butterfly strong sit. And just like taps, I would start out with about 30 seconds, increase it to a minute. I would recommend not going beyond 5 minutes, because if our kids are so relaxed, they'll fall asleep and we will so be tempted to let them. But that's not the purpose of strong sitting. I would teach it preventively, In my own home, I've had children that when they get up in the morning, they do their, bathroom routine, get dressed, and come down and strong sit before breakfast. I have other kids that, because we had enough that we had to share 3 bathrooms and we had to share the schedule. So some of the kids would come and strong sit before they were even able to go and get ready for school. We did it after school. When you came home, come in and go to your strong sitting spot. And then we would go into what we're going to talk about shortly, Marty, and that is the skills-based coaching to both reflect and plan for the evening. I would teach it preventively and proactively, build it routinely and predictably into your schedule, and then you can begin to use it as a plan. But I would not use it as a timeout, and I would not use it as some teachers do in school when kids get loud. All right, everybody put your heads down. Let's do taps. Because we don't want it to be reactive. It needs to be preventive. And so you can partner with your kid and say, when are some times you think strong sitting might help you? You'll see some other things about social emotional regulation, self-regulation. Finger puppets are a good way to plan and play with students and even older kids. You would be amazed that middle school students will buy into doing a dialogue with you. It's almost like ventriloquism. They will buy into doing a dialogue with you if it doesn't directly speak about their behavior. So they can learn techniques and talk about problems through using puppets or finger puppets. And you can do some what if situations to get them to open up and talk about what good choices and best choices would be. Sorry. Another way to help our kids self-regulate. How many of you get frustrated when you're doing something at home ever? I mean, like probably never, right? How many of you are in a hurry sometimes when you come home and you're fixing dinner? I was tonight. Didn't go well. How many of you bang? No, I'm not going to really go there. I started saying how many you throw, bang, and cuss. We're not going to really go there. Just kidding. But what I wanted to share is how many of you find that you talk to yourself out loud when these things are happening. So instead of negatively complaining, it is okay. And if we intentionally begin to talk out loud about problem solving, it is a great way to model for our kids how to self-regulate right in the midst of a crisis. For instance, well, looks like dinner burned. Guess I'm going to have to come up with a plan B. Breakfast for dinner it is. So just doing that simple, intentional, what might feel awkward, those of you who are not talkers to yourself, it's going to feel weird, but I call it thinking out loud. And when you think out loud and you can talk yourself through a problem, like, out of cornstarch, flour will work. I can still make gravy. So those kinds of simple little things, and these are the instances where you might not even think your kids are listening, but you will be modeling how to problem solve and self-regulate right in the middle of when things are not going well. Another really great strategy, and this is the last one we'll speak of tonight, is family read aloud time. Whether it's a chapter book, I'm going to speak now personally. We would choose a book. We ended up doing the whole Humphrey. Have you guys ever heard of Humphrey, the hamster that went to school? And we ended up buying and doing the whole series. And even my teenagers in high school would participate, and we would take turns reading aloud. And then we would talk about what happened with all of the different characters. We could do prediction. But a lot of times we can relate to fictional characters, like Junie B. Jones is a very famous one. Another one I like is Chrysanthemum. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. And another one is Mean Jean, the Recess Queen. And talking about fictional characters and their behaviors and what they could have or should have done differently. So hopefully those are a few good tips for self-regulation and teaching skills to our kids. And I'm going to turn it back over to my best boss, Marty.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Any thoughts, comments, questions up to this point? So you will be receiving a handout. Yeah, Peggy?
When you're talking about self-regulation, could you explain that just a little bit?
Linda, you want to jump in there?
Sure. Self-regulation is the ability to manage our emotions effectively in a stressful situation.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. So many little kids, it is quite common for a 2-year-old. First of all, they don't have the words, but they definitely do not have the rationale to self-regulate. If they're mad, they fall out on the floor, and you know exactly how they feel. As we begin to get older, we manage stress in a different way. And if we don't self-regulate, that stress causes our anxiety to go higher. And we often then fall into those negative reactions of the fight, flight, or freeze. So learning to manage our emotions during times of stress is what we mean by self-regulating.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Hey, I'm going to probably repeat just a little bit from last week. So those of you that joined us last week, bear with me. But there are a couple of things. First of all, one of the things we want to try to get consistent with as parents is what I'm going to call early intervention. And so recognizing when your child is kind of going off the rails, recognizing the small indicators of that and stopping it at that point. In order to be able to really utilize what we're going to call early intervention, you have to have good boundaries. Okay. And we will talk a little more next week about how to set boundaries and how to follow through on boundaries. But one of the things, and I got this from Brene Brown, and she is a pretty renowned author right at this point in time in our society, by the way. Have you heard of Brene Brown? Anybody heard of her? She tweeted me. I just want you to know that. She and I are like best friends now. Anyway, one of the things she said about her household is one of the boundaries is it's never okay to call names in our household. You can't even call yourself a name. She was talking about her son saying, "I'm so stupid." And she's, "Hey, we don't call names here." And he said, "I didn't call anybody a name. You called yourself a name." So setting boundaries about what's okay, what's not okay in our household. And sometimes that has to do with the tone of our voice. Sometimes that has to do with the words we choose to use. Sometimes that has to do with what we do with our hands and our feet when we're upset. Setting boundaries about what it looks like to stay calm and regulated. Okay. And then when you start to see your child go off the rails, trying to catch that when it's small before it becomes a big problem and intervening at that time. One of our goals is to be able to redirect without anger. And we talked about that last week. Redirect kids saying, "Hey, I know this is hard. Can you take yourself to our designated safe place to get back on track? I know this is hard. Can you sit down and do taps or some strong sitting to get yourself back on track?" When kids have escalated, okay, because that's going to happen, and we're not always going to be able to prevent it. And we don't always want to prevent that because we do want kids to learn how to be emotional and come back out of that emotion and be able to problem solve through the emotion and what they did that was good and what they could do more productively next time. Okay. But when kids are escalated, that is not when we want to problem solve. We want to give time. The first thing we're looking at is safety. Okay. If kids are out of control physically, making sure that they're safe, making sure the siblings are safe, and then helping them calm down, giving time. Time is your friend. Now, as parents, there's always multitasking going on, right? So trying to, when it's necessary, stop the multitasking and focusing on your child. And I'm going to give you time. Making sure that your voice is calming, teaching some breathing techniques through that escalation. Can you take a deep breath with me? And let's let it out. Okay. And then one of the best things I think, a great technique for kids is to be able to walk and talk, because gross motor skills, it takes effort for gross motor skills, which then will help kids come out of that escalated area or that escalated state. Okay. When we do use early intervention and redirect kids, and now this is repetition from last week, some exact words to use. And the reason I'm telling you about exact words is because if I know exactly what I'm going to say in any situation, then I can respond without emotion. If I'm reacting, it is more likely for me to use emotion. Okay. So some words are, can you, even though, can you take a deep breath and go sit down, even though you're really angry? Can you move away from your sister, even though she's irritating you? Okay. Now, there are some pretty predictable ways that kids respond. I don't know if you've ever heard this in your household, but I've heard it on occasion. When I say, can you, I hear this response back, why? Ah, what did I do? So Linda and I are going to role play that just a little bit, okay? And here's why we're repeating it. The feedback we've gotten from previous parent series is people want to hear it more than once. Okay. And so we're going to just role play that language of intervention, and then we're going to go into language of coaching. So, Linda, I'm a kid. I'm getting a little out of bounds here.
Okay. Hey, Marty, can you go ahead and sit in your quiet place, even though you don't want to?
Why? I'm not the only one.
Great question. Go ahead and move. You can tell me why.
Ah. Okay. So the why question. Kids are not asking for information. Kids are asking to argue. And when we as the adults answer that why question, we end up in this kind of conversation. Nikki, can you stop doing that? Why? What was I doing? Well, you were picking at your brother. No, I wasn't. Yes, you were. And that's not the best conversation to have with your children. Okay. So when kids say why after a redirect, know that your next comeback or your next comment is going to be, great question. Can you go ahead and move over here? And we'll talk in a little bit. Okay. And you already want to have that in your mind so that it's not emotional when you say it. Okay. Another way kids are going to come back, they're going to blame. So, Linda, let's do that one real quick.
Okay. Marty, can you go ahead and move to your quiet spot, even though you don't want to?
What? Vicky does it all the time. You
I
never
know
see
this
Vicky.
feels hard. Can you
It's
go
not
ahead?
hard. It's stupid, Mom. Wish you could see Vicky once in a while.
Okay, parents, right now you kind of want to reach out and touch her, right? But I don't know if you could hear me, but I said, I know this is hard. Can you go ahead and move?
Okay. Now, we talked a little bit about that last week, and then we talked about teaching kids to have power with their words through 5 components: timing, exact words, tone of voice, body language, and proximity. Here's the thing that I believe all of us want for our children. We all want our children to be able to manage emotions without getting in trouble. Agreed? We all want our children to be able to take good care of themselves when other people are not making the right choices. Agreed? The third thing we all want our children to be able to do is be able to do things when they don't want to or it's hard. And so if you look as a parent at correcting behavior, okay, what you're going to be doing is correcting behavior all the time. What we want to do is see the behavior and put it into a category of skill. And the reason we want to put it into a category of skill is one, we can teach skill, and that's what you do as parents, right? And two, then we're always tying it back to one thing, two things, or three things to teach. So, what Linda has determined about me, her daughter, is that I have a hard time doing things when I don't want to. So, she's going to coach me. She's going to set the first conversation up, and that's going to take a little bit. Okay. And then we're going to move forward into, we've already set the conversation up. Now it's just about practicing before it takes place, which is, Nikki, where you were trying to get with your son on the homework. Okay. So I can't do things when I don't want to. And it really has to do with my bedroom and cleaning it and making my bed, because I don't know why you care if my bed is made. I'm the one that has to sleep in it.
Marty, I know it feels unfair. Let me ask you this. When I ask you to do something that you think is dumb, do you do it or not do it?
Well, eventually I do it.
Is it easy or hard for you to do it the first time?
Well, hard because I don't want to.
And I understand. I respect that you don't want to. What is it your job to do, even when you don't want to?
Take care of my bedroom and do what you ask me to.
Exactly. And are you supposed to do that respectfully or rudely?
Respectfully.
Should you do it the first time, or when it's time for you to get ready to do something you want to do?
I need to do it right when you ask me to, because then I can't do what I want until it's done.
Exactly. So we're going to practice a conversation every morning. And then when is another time of the day that you think it would be good for us to have a practice conversation about doing things when you don't want to?
Well, probably, you said first thing in the morning.
Yes.
Well, then probably like when I get home from school.
All right. And I'm going to give you a choice here, Marty. Do you think it would be best for you to make your bed first thing in the morning, or within a certain time when you get home from school?
Well, if I get up when I'm supposed to, then I can make it in the morning, and then I won't have to do it after I get home.
Great. And do you think that we're only going to be talking about your bedroom, or are we going to be talking about all things that are hard for you when you don't like them?
We're going to talk about everything.
Exactly. So, we have Dad in the picture too here. So he's usually home in the evening. Do you want to speak to each of us, or do you want right now for me to be the coach around doing something when you don't want to?
I just want it to be you right now, Mom.
I think that's a great choice. However, part of doing something you don't want to do you think that will be following only my directions or Dad's directions also?
You and Dad.
Exactly. All right. Sounds good, Marty. We're going to start tomorrow morning.
Now let's do the practice, and I want you to see how quickly this moves, because that was a conversation that lasted about 3 minutes, and that was our conversation to set up so that we can do coaching. All right, so now it's tomorrow morning.
Hey, good morning, Marty.
Good morning, Mom.
Hey, I noticed you made your bed already this morning. What a great start.
Yeah.
Yep. So how'd you sleep last night?
Slept like a baby.
Excellent. You got up first time quickly. Love it. Love it. Love you too, babe. Hey, guess what? I want to know if you know what goal we're working on together.
Yeah, I remember, because we talked about last night, being able to do things when you or Dad tell me to, and do it the first time.
And are those things going to be when you want to, or even when you don't?
Even, especially when I don't.
And so if there's something that feels hard or you don't like it, should you say, I hate this house, or this feels hard?
This feels hard.
Is your voice going to be calm or angry?
Has to be calm and respectful.
Very good. So we're going to talk some more tonight when you get home. Great job.
Thanks, Mom. Have a great day, man.
You too.
Okay, so you will notice that every question she asked me had to do with the timing of when I would say it, and when I would do what she was asking, the tone of my voice, my exact words. She included my exact words. Are you going to say, I hate this house, or this feels hard? Is my voice going to be respectful? Or I can't remember the words she gave me, grumpy. And what she didn't talk about is where I would go if I didn't want to do what she asked. And that's one thing that you might want to talk to your children about is if I ask you to do something and you don't want to do it, where am I going to expect you to go? Okay.
Let me throw that in.
Sure.
Okay, Marty, you did a great job. One thing I forgot to ask you is when things feel hard and you need a minute, where can you go to calm down?
Probably if we're downstairs, I can go to the table, the kitchen table.
Mhm.
And if we're upstairs, if we're in the living room, I can go to sit on the steps.
I love it. And when you go there, how will your feet take you?
Without stomping.
Exactly.
Quietly.
And do you think you're going to need seconds or minutes before you're ready to talk?
Oh, before I'm ready to talk, if I'm really mad or frustrated, then I'll need minutes. But otherwise, I just need seconds.
Okay. And you want me to come check on you to see if you're ready, or do you want to come find me and say, Mom, I'm ready now?
I'll come find you.
Excellent. Thanks, Marty.
Okay, thoughts, comments, questions, guys? Because if you don't have thoughts, comments, or questions, we're going to keep talking here. We got a few more things we can cover.
I was going to say they can also put something in the chat if they want to ask a question. If everybody knows where the chat is, it's at the bottom of your screen or on your phone. There's a little button that says chat, and you can look in there.
Okay.
Hey, Marty, I have a question as a follow-up, not particularly about the language itself, because that's familiar to the school setting, which I love. I'm wondering about having multiple children. Do you facilitate that conversation, like have the others go there, how like usually they're there listening in and wanting to chime in, and so sometimes that causes issues too.
Absolutely. And Nicole, I think, have you started putting your little guys in safe seats yet?
Not yet. But you know, I have big guys, so I have a 7, 8, 10, and 11-year-old too. So
You got a house full there, sister.
yes,
And
ma'am.
a 7, 8, 10, and 11-year-old. Is that what you said?
Yes.
So everybody's got to hear everything all the time,
Yes,
don't they?
yes.
Linda, do you want to respond to Nicole on that?
Yeah, Nicole, that's a great question. Thank you. And I'm thinking that if you're doing the skills-based coaching, that is not about anyone's specific behavior. So that conversation can kind of be almost a round table, not discussion so much, but you can include your 11, did you say 7, 8, and 11-year-old?
And 10.
Sorry about that. But you can include them, especially if they're all working on the same skill. If not, you can ask your 11-year-old, so what skill are we working on together? And notice I change that a lot in schools. We say, so what's your goal, or what skill are you working on? But in families, I think it speaks so loudly and supportively for us to say to our kids, what goal are we working on together? That just kind of walks out the fact that I'm on your side. So I think you can ask if they have separate goals. You can ask very quickly and they can all be together, because it's not about any specific behavior. It's not problem solving. It's planning for how I will handle my big emotions without making it worse. However, if you are problem solving, those conversations need to be individual and separate.
Okay, thank you.
And private. And private. Separate probably indicates private.
Yeah, sorry about that. It does, because that is the time, especially if your 11-year-old knows that your 7-year-old was mouthy and disobeyed and is sitting down getting ready to problem solve. It'd be so tempting to add his 2 cents. But
Exactly. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
having them go do something productive while you chat with the one who needs you is perfect.
I also think to go back and remember that we don't have to hurry to that conversation, that problem solving conversation. And now you've heard Linda mention the problem solving conversation. You've heard me mention the problem solving conversation. Next week, we are going to focus on when I, as a child, have made a mistake, how does my parent problem solve through with me so that I don't have to continue to make that mistake? Okay. What we're doing right now is some pre-coaching on skills. And but next week we're going to talk about, okay, now they've had the big blow up, they've had the fit, they've gotten angry, I tore my homework paper up. Now what do we do? How do we come back and problem solve through that? Okay. Additionally, I wanted to say that next week we'll also, and so just Nicole and Peggy, just to let you know, we will likely add in family meetings next week. As I was looking at some of our sessions, we will probably add in family meetings next week. And then we'll talk about boundaries and planning on the last week. All right.
Sounds good.
Then I also want to say, I want to go back and recapture something that I didn't do a good job clarifying. Okay. I would like to talk about, I said, when kids are going off the rail, what are indicators? I think some real typical indicators are the way kids breathe. Their breathing gets quicker, and you can hear their breathing. I also think, I don't know if you have daughters or not, but daughters are great at letting you know by rolling their eyes and flicking their hair. And those are little things, but those are things that begin to indicate, okay, we're going off track here. I think little boys, their movements are sometimes an indicator of we're getting off track here. Linda, would you like to add to that as well? Some of the little things we can identify that tell us kids are getting off track?
Another little specific thing is that they appear to be compliant. Like you give them a direction or a task and they turn around to go do it and they mumble as they walk away. That's a great indicator. Another indicator is moving in slow motion. Another indicator is the silent treatment, where you ask the question and you suddenly become invisible and they don't respond.
In the chat, someone mentioned rolling their eyes and covering their eyes or looking away.
Looking away from you, yeah. And I think sometimes when we see those little things, we want to fix it right then. What we want to do is get behavior stopped. The problem solving comes later.
Yes.
Okay.
Can
And
I
then
share real quick? Oh, I'm so sorry.
go ahead.
Can I just share? It has to do with time and timing. The son I'm speaking of right now is, he is now 24 and has 2 beautiful children and is in the Navy, and I'm so proud of him. But we had kind of a rough go. I didn't get to be his mom officially forever until he was 14. So his mode of operandi was to refuse to answer a question. And so I gave him the choice of either sitting in the recliner at the dining room table, and either one's fine with me. If I choose, it'll be at the table. He picked the table anyway. I think he thought it would make me mad. But I'm just going to give the example, not the whole conversation, but he wouldn't answer my question. He said, well, I'm not answering that. And I said, that's okay. I'll give you the time that you need. So he sat at the table. We set the table around him. We had dinner. He ate his dinner. He went ahead and scraped his plate and put it up. Came back to the table after it was cleaned off and basically sat. We all had ice cream. I said, would you like some ice cream? And he goes, well, I haven't answered your question. I said, oh, that is true. Well, you're not in trouble. I'm just giving you time. So we sat there and he looked shocked. And my reason for this was because of his traumatic childhood, and food had been a huge issue and blah, blah, blah. So I didn't want to damage my relationship with him while I was still holding him accountable. Long story short, he went to bed, told him I loved him, good night, sleep well. Next morning, got up and went to school, came home, sat at the table. And it took him until 9:30 the second evening when I gave him an opportunity to either be willing to talk about, well, answer my question verbally, or if it would be easier for him, he could certainly write it down. Well, I knew he hated to write, but I share that example just to let you know that sometimes when Marty mentions giving them time, it can take a lot of time. And he knows that I would have gone ahead and waited one more day and one more day after that. And so time, as Marty said, is your friend. And it is one of the most powerful components of pulling kids into accountability, is to wait until they are ready and able to answer the question and then problem solve around why that was so hard. Thanks,
Hey,
Marty.
Linda,
Yeah.
I came home from school and I went to the table to sit down, and I really want to go to the movie tonight.
Okay. Marty, I wish you could go to the movie. You're absolutely not in even any trouble. So are you ready to have that conversation?
Well, I just want to go to the movie because my friend said that it starts at 5:30 too, so I need to hurry.
What do you think needs to happen before I can choose to let you go to the movie?
Okay, so what Linda is demonstrating is she's not in charge of when we as the parents are not in charge of when they choose to answer our questions, but we are in charge of restrictions and activities until they're able to answer our questions. What you got, Peggy?
I have a question. One of the participants, her phone doesn't work. The microphone isn't working very well. And
Okay.
she was wondering about what advice do you have for when the kids start doing this specifically during e-learning or remote learning? Oftentimes my son gets overwhelmed during the Zoom meetings. Of course, I'd like to give him time, but unfortunately time is limited. And I don't want him to miss out on the information on the Zoom meetings by allowing him time to calm down.
I'll be honest, I think there's some pre-coaching ability there, or an opportunity for some pre-coaching. And what lets you know when you're starting to get frustrated or overwhelmed during the Zoom meeting. And I agree with your son. It's easy to get overwhelmed during that time frame. And then also talking about some things that he can do during, if he starts to feel that way. Are there some deep breathing activities? Would it help to have a fidget? Because sometimes kids can have fidgets and using their hands. And a fidget just being something they have in their hand they can move. Is there something that you can think about? I also think there are times that kids can do taps during the learning where you close your eyes and you count to, I don't know how old this child is, but I teach children, oftentimes young children, when you close your eyes to do taps, do you want to count to 50 inside your head or say your ABCs twice? And so that, and there is research around closing your eyes resets your mind. And so sometimes just taking a deep breath, closing your eyes, counting 50 inside your head can get you back on track. But I also think the pre-coaching comes before we start the Zoom learning session. If you start to get overwhelmed, what can you do? What will it look like? And I agree, a break is not always a possibility. A get up and go away kind of break is not a possibility, but a breathing, take care of yourself for a moment break could be a possibility.
And her son is 7.
Oh, and 7 is a great time. And Peggy, 7 is a great time to begin to teach those self-regulation skills and teach kids how to begin to recognize that they're getting overwhelmed. What do you feel when you're getting overwhelmed? And you can have them show you, is it your hands get sweaty? Does your head get hot? Does your stomach hurt? Does your breathing get fast? And so helping kids explore that, but all of that exploration comes when kids are not emotional. Okay. And then Peggy, I wanted to hit on what you had put into chat there. I wonder if parents have a time they might do taps. Linda mentioned that she thinks it's great for when kids have been out of the classroom in a school setting, when kids have been out of the classroom and they're coming back in, to go directly to taps. I also think as a parent, within some of your routines, you can build taps in. And I wanted to just go back and ensure that this is not about a reaction. We want it to become a procedure. So if we've been outside playing and we're going to have to come in and do our homework, it might be we sit down and do taps for 2 minutes before we before we start into our homework. If we have done a pretty kind of a rowdy, we had a little dance party in our house and it's time to calm down so we can begin to settle down for bedtime, it might be a good time to do taps. I think anytime kids have had their bodies up and energetic and excited, it's a good time to bring them down. But I think if you could make it procedure based, this is just how we take good care of ourselves in our household. Then it doesn't feel punishment based.
One of the other things I was thinking about too, while you were talking about this, and I don't want to bring Nikki back into it too, Miss Harris, but she was talking similar, it sounded like, with her son. It may not have been during Zoom, but one of the things I took away from that conversation is you said to do that coaching when you're having fun or on the weekend before they did Zoom. I can't remember, Nikki or Marty, what you were talking about, but I know that she tried that and it worked.
Well, I don't know that it worked.
Well, helped.
I think just because I knew that we should talk through it ahead of time, but before mentioning it to the group, I was doing it just like, 5 p.m. before we started work at 6 p.m., which that wasn't like fully separate because of course we knew that homework was coming. And so Marty gave the great tip of like completely away from that problem. So on the weekend when you're just enjoying the day or whatever, it's not the anticipation of here it comes. We know here it's coming. And I hope that I'm saying that right, Marty, but it was completely outside of whatever that triggering event is.
The trigger. Okay.
Thanks, Nikki. You articulated that well. I appreciate it.
Did that help, Stephanie? You can either unmute or put it in the chat.
All
Yep,
right.
that helps a lot.
Oh,
Thank you.
Other, how
oh,
do you do these things with multiple children? I have a 6-year-old with ADHD. With multiple children, you can do that's why we're going to talk about family meetings next week, because family meetings can help us do some of the planning. We're also going to talk about problem solving for accountability next week. Okay. Again, I want to go back and kind of reiterate, if there's an event that we're trying to problem solve, we want to do that more privately. Okay. If it is coaching, we can do that as a whole group or a whole family sometimes. I think also family meetings allow us to plan for when there is a problem, what does it look like to manage the problem? And so again, next week we'll hit on problem solving. I want to make sure I'm getting this information correct to you. And I've lost my location. Okay. We will hit on problem solving for accountability and how to do that through kindness without anger. We will hit on outlasting again. We'll talk about how outlasting creates resilience, and we will bring family meetings into that. So Peggy, the original agenda that I sent you, I'm going to shift up just a little bit, if that's okay.
yes.
So we'll bring family meetings into that and how to do planning. And I think it's good timing for family meetings because you can also do planning for holidays through family meetings. And so that's what we will plan on next week. I will send, as soon as we're finished here, I will send Peggy the handout from tonight so that you have the information. It will include the resources for the brain gym activities that Linda referred to. And then honestly, Peggy, you're the parent liaison for the district. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you have questions, thoughts, or comments about things that you would like us to touch on, please don't hesitate to reach out to Peggy and she can let us know that as well.
There was one other question, and I know we're at 7:30, but maybe if it's not now for next time, suggestions with teenagers. It seems that it is easier to correct their behavior when they're younger. I have a 17 and 14-year-old and a 13-year-old. 7 and 14 are boys and 13 is a girl.
Well, good luck. We will absolutely talk about teenagers as well. It is easier to correct behavior when kids are younger. Here's kind of a rule of thumb. When there's a significant change that needs to be made, Change occurs at about the pace of 1 month for every year you are old. And that's why we want to take things on and really set good boundaries, begin to teach our children good self-regulation skills when they're young, so that there isn't as much corrective work to do. But I'm going to tell you that I don't care how much work you put into your young children. If you've got a teenager, you're going to have problems. And you're going to have problems with attitude and the way they respond to you. And so we will do some role play where I'm going to be a kind of a nasty teenager for those of you that have teenagers. And I'll let Linda be my kind, loving, dear mother. So we will make sure that we include conversation for teenagers next week as well. Okay. And I don't want to postpone you, but I also want to be respectful of your time and the time that we committed to.
Hey, I came in late, but my name's Tracy,
Hey, Tracy.
and my son and I have been going through a lot right now. Our house got broke into, and they started packing up all our stuff and belongings that they it was kind of not good. So then at the same time they broke into my car. But the thing is my son Deacon is 19. He's going through some changes. He's also going through a thing where he's working as training at County Market, and he seems to really enjoy that. And when he comes home, he doesn't want to end up going and actually really doing a whole lot. But I said, come on, Deacon, I just want to end up going and actually having some time with you. But he's in there watching videos. I'm sure going, come on. But I want to end up going and spending time with him, but I don't know how to end up going and actually going about why am I stressing out too much, or we always get in arguments and I don't like that. I want to end up being able to to do things with him, but I can tell you one thing, it's like Deacon is my rock. He's picked me up off the floor from falling several different times, and when he's not here, I kind of make myself sit down and not even get up doing anything because I don't want to end up falling. Kind of like a scare thing. I don't know. I'm really having time with my balance and stuff. So I just want to end up going and actually, how do you go about actually not getting into an argument with a 19-year-old when you're not?
So Tracy, first of all, thank you for your questions, and I my heart goes out to you for some of the difficult circumstances. What I'm going to do, Tracy, just to be respectful here, is let us close out. Tracy, if you'll stay on, okay? And then if other folks want to stay on to hear conversation about how to stay out of those arguments and power struggles with teenagers, we will also hit on that again next week. But Tracy, I don't want you to wait until next week, okay? So let's do this. Let's let Peggy or Vicky close us out, and then Tracy, you stay on, as well as anybody else that might be interested in staying on.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I just wanted to share, first of all, I want to say thank you to Marty and to Linda. Everybody, there's a reaction button if you would like to give a thumbs up, a little clap, but really appreciate all their expertise and just their common sense, or not common sense, but down to earth way of sharing these beautiful tips on how we can help our children. You can see their information here. And next week is going to be problem solving. And Marty went over what we're going to be talking about. She is going to add in about the family meetings. So we hope you'll be able to come on again. And if this is your last time, or last chance, if you come to the next 3, you will still be eligible for a t-shirt. One of our parents wanted that to happen. So please do that. But as Marty said, also, if you have any questions, email back. You get a lot of emails from us. Just respond to one of the emails and we'll get you the information. We are going to be handing out or sending a handout from Marty from tonight. And I will include the handout from last week also in that. So
Thank you, Peggy.
Oh, you're welcome. And Vicki put an evaluation in the chat, and I'll let Vicky, if you have something else you want to share about that.
Not exactly. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. We want the evaluation to be completed so we can make sure that these sessions are actually touching on the things that you all are interested in learning more about, so we can improve our offerings for families. We want to continue offering the support that families are needing during these remote times. And so that's just our quick and easy way of doing that. If you could just click that before you exit the room, that would be extremely helpful to us. So we hope to see you back next week and the week after Thanksgiving. And not only will you receive those great tips from Marty, but you'll get a t-shirt.
I'm hoping I get one.
Sure you will.
Sure.
Thank you, I love you.
The next two
All right.
dates are November 19th and December 3rd. We're
Yes,
taking,
all right.
we won't
Thank
see
you.
you on the week of Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. Have a
Thank
good
you all.
night. Tracy, if you want to hang